As the scene unfolds before us, we see that a guy is forging something very passionately. While he was forging, an old man appears in the room and exclaims with, "Damn Curie sword." While holding the sword, he asked the boy if he had forged that sword, to which he replied with a yes and said that was right. The old man appeared to be Donga, who was the owner of the Donga weapon shop, and the boy who was forging the sword was Curie Helen. Seeing the confused look of the old man, he asked him about what it was, to which he rather asked him another question about how long since he came here. The boy replied that it was about a year now. The old man exclaimed and said, "For the fell son to finally come home, what a waste." He asked him not to go back to the time when he said, "Does a smith choose his lineage?" The boy was confused, so he asked him what that meant, to which the old man replied that there was nothing else he could teach the boy. He added that from there onwards, he will have to confront the world by himself. After saying all that, he took hold of the boy's hair and started dragging him somewhere, which was hurting the boy. The master claimed that the boy had a frightful talent, and so he should just continue to forge metal every day, as his hands will become dull if he takes rest. To which the boy agreed and asked if he was getting a profession and thanked his master for it. It started about a year ago as we dive into the past, where a kid was trying to grab an apple off the tree while his parents were stopping him. His mother said that if it is only for the apple then she will buy it, and asked him to get down immediately. The kid ignored her and as a result, he fell from the apple tree very badly. His two friends were calling his names and were trying to find someone who could call a doctor. As the protagonist fell from the tree, he recovered his memories from his past life. In his previous life, he died in a traffic accident, so he must have been reincarnated in the new world. And that new world was the game he had played in his previous world, Gensu Academy. Gensu Academy was about the female protagonist who deepens her connections with royalty and nobles while pursuing romance. The main component of the game was that the rivals act to obstruct the main character, and then only once in the whole game, a scene came out featuring the protagonist Curie Helen. In the game, despite being treated badly by the evil rich girl character for some reason, in the ending, he marries her, not as a noble, but instead as a fallen aristocrat being a poor farmer. The protagonist said that in the new life he should avoid that at all costs. Suddenly, he woke up shouting. His parents were beside him. He realized that only 3 years are left until his graduation. Seeing him like that, his mother asked him what was wrong, as he cannot move too much yet. Curie said to himself that he needs to prepare in 3 years to avoid that crappy ending after graduation. He mentioned to himself that he has to do everything that he can. Now coming back to his present life, he did a magical diet and various things and also got a profession in his hands. When he reached home he announced his presence. Maids greeted him and welcomed him. He thought that anyway his father was also there, so it should be peaceful for a while. As he was trying to find his parents, he saw that in the hall, a man was standing who was saying that the villagers are decreasing. He hid behind the door to hear the full conversation. On the other hand, his father asked the man if it was peaceful and safe, and his mother agreed to it. Curie wondered to himself that as villagers are decreasing, how can his parents be acting like it was nothing? After Curie came home, this problem suddenly appeared. When his parents saw him, they also welcomed him. He mentioned within himself that it was wrong. It was still too easy to fail, and so he has to do his best. He exclaimed that what he has to do is to grasp the current situation and to take measures in the future. Suddenly, he realized that he can rely on the keeper of his library. Curie goes to his library and shouts if his old man Morin was there. The name of the librarian seemed to be Morin, and he responded to him. Morin said that Curie has become quite lovely, to which he replied that it was because he trained as a blacksmith. Curie asked him to leave that fact aside and explained to him that he had something to talk to him about. Morin asked about what it was, to which he replied that their villagers seemed to be decreasing little by little every month. He asked him if they had any improvement plan about that. Morin nodded and said that the main selling point of that place was tourism. After all, this was the land where the first king said that he would like to die in that land as the place had beautiful nature. However, the number of tourists who come there to visit decreases year by year, and there were no special products made on that island. Morin added that if the tourists decrease, the income of the villagers also will decrease, as a result of which they will go to another land where the income is more likely stable. Curie thought that in other words, his family was in trouble. Seeing him thinking deeply, Morin asked him if he was done reading the spellbook that he gave him, to which Curie responded that it was too easy to understand, not to mention that basic elemental change. He claimed that he also succeeded in the change of the material substance and in the plant's creation. Morin exclaimed that it was expected from Curie, so he offered him another volume and exclaimed that it was the next volume from the earlier book. Curie mentioned that it was also written by Chris Helen and asked Morin if he was an ancestor or something, to which Morin mentioned that if he finds the previous book easy to understand, then that means his magic level has risen, so it may be easier for Curie. While he asks Morin if he knows who Chris Helen is, before he could even complete his question he noticed that Morin was no longer there and was gone. He exclaimed to himself that it was expected from Morin and added that after all, it was still vague and did not solve anything. He wondered about what he should do now. As he was thinking about Morin, he found Mary and called her, to which she recognized him. As she was carrying some sort of box, he asked her about what was in it, to which she replied that this post box contained a message from the people around the village. He then took out one of the letters and started reading. It was written that lately there had been mysterious sounds coming from the ground within the territory. He was surprised to read the letter. The next morning, he thanked everyone for gathering. He mentioned the letter that he got yesterday, and it seemed that there was a high possibility of a hot spring. He himself started digging the ground, and so did he motivate others to keep digging. As they were digging, they found something coming up from the spot, and that was it, as if it was a hot spring. Kyuri informed his father that a hot spring had gushed, to which his father looked confused. He asked his father to listen and said that the hot spring will increase the number of tourists in their Helen territory, and so the hot spring will become their next main feature. He also added that they have a new selling point, which is a big point. His father understood what he was trying to say. Kyuri offers to start making an appeal at the first prince's birthday party, which is to be held next month. On the occasion of the prince's birthday party, everyone was busy within themselves. Kyuri exclaimed to himself that it was useless as everyone wants to talk to the first prince, so he was completely surrounded. Suddenly he noticed a kid and recognized her as the second prince, whose name was Rasha Kyuten. Kyuri noticed that the second prince was different from the first prince and thought that it was his chance. He tried to approach Rasha, but instead she got scared by the sudden gesture. He inquired about what he wanted, to which Kyuri introduced himself. Rasha also did the same and said that it was nice meeting him. He asked Rasha if he knew about the Helen territory and added that they have a hot spring over there if he would like to visit, to which the prince replied with a yes and asked if he was not mistaken. It was the one Toril Helen is the Felidal lord of. He asked him if he could come and see the hot spring. Kyuri mentioned that of course he could come, and surely it will become a good trip. Kyuri gave him his sword as a mark of their acquaintance. The prince admitted that the sword was well made, to which Kyuri mentioned that it was his handmade one. Rasha exclaimed that it was amazing and requested him to show where he was making it. Kyuri agreed and thought that he did it and secured one person. A week later, Rasha appeared before Kyuri with his mother. Kyuri and his father were both surprised and wondered why the queen was there as well. The second prince asked them both to raise their heads and that they could act as usual. The queen explained to them that Rasha wanted to visit Helen territory, so she decided to come along with him and added that she was also looking forward to the hot spring. The queen mentioned to them the rumor had reached there as well. A moment later, Rasha asked if Kyuri was good at riding a horse, to which he replied, only a little. The prince asked him if he would like to ride the horse along with him and added that the epitome of traveling was going around as a person pleases. The protagonist had been wondering what kind of person the prince was and admitted that he was a nice person. They both started riding with their horses. While they were riding, they both realized that they went too deep inside the forest and saw that a wolf was approaching them. The prince asked him to leave it to him as he was quite good at magic. Kyuri said to himself, well, it was just one old demon. Rasha casted some magic spell and ignited the demon, but to the prince's surprise, he pounced on him. The protagonist asked him to get down and fired his spells too and was successfully able to ignite the wolf. The prince was amazed to see it and added that Kyuri's level in smithing and magic were quite high. He exclaimed that Kyuri was also active in governing his family territory. The prince insisted on letting him call Akini, to which Kyuri said that it was fine, but as it might be dangerous to be there, he advised that they both should go back for the time being, and then they returned home with a smile. But there was one thing that now the protagonist understood. There were too few places for people to visit. Suddenly, a woman appeared on the scene and asked Kyuri if he had called her for something, to which he replied that it was nothing. And a few days after that, he was looking for new tourist spots. While exploring, he found a waterfall and claimed that the waterfall was okay and decided to search for the next spot. Then he found a lake whose name was Kiri, and it was a nice lake. He admits that he just did not know as there were various places. A villager appears whose name was Lotson. He mentioned to the protagonist that the Ronker Falls, Kiri Lake, and then that place. He explained that he was there on behalf of the villager who just wanted to thank him for his hard work. Hearing the villager's kind word, Kyuri exclaimed that instead he should thank the villager as it was Lotson because of whom he learned so much, and also added that it was kind of a countermeasure. Moreover, it felt reassuring when he brought someone who can be relied on. Kyuri got emotional saying those words, to which Lotson asked him if he was okay. The protagonist replied to him that it was nothing. The next moment, the protagonist can be seen trying to break an apple inside the library. He succeeded and exclaimed that finally, he was able to do it. Suddenly, Morin, the librarian, appeared and inquired about what he was doing there, to which the protagonist replied that he was practicing the magic tool application from the spellbook 2. Morin asked him if he was trying to practice using those apples. Kyuri tries to explain to him, saying that he wondered if he can extract honey-like liquid from the apples by using the water substance change. Morin insisted that his theory was already good and added that Kyuri needed to grasp his magical powers by his own place, as it will not be grasped in an instant. It was difficult to maintain magical power. After all, there were also only a few who could do it. The protagonist could see what Morin was trying to say. The librarian instructed him that he was already a good user, and by saying that he handed him a book. Kyuri thanked the librarian and he wished him good luck and disappeared. The protagonist thinks that he seemed irregular, but he already did it that far. He wondered if he should taste the apple, as it now was a magical one. He realizes that it might be a terrible idea. After eating that apple, mana overflowed through his body, and now he was invincible. Kyuri started celebrating his success and exclaimed that he did it. At the same time, at Helen's residence backyard, a man asked the other if there was really a treasure of the first king in such a place, to which the other nodded with a yes. The man was confused about the sole record in that country's history, a blank land. The other guy tries to explain to him that it was in that place that the first king liked it so much. Later on, we get to know that the two men were the famous thieves, Dark Shadows, and were aiming for the treasure. They opened the gate and found a chest on the ground. They wondered if it was the real chest. On the other side, the protagonist had already heard them and was there to protect the chest. He mentioned to himself that there were only two thieves. He confronts the thieves and exclaims that the newly improved Almighty Kyuri will teach them 2 lessons. By saying that, he quickly casted a water magic spell. The 2 thieves were confused and did not know what it was. Suddenly, one of them realized that the floor had turned into a swamp and the other was not able to even move. Seeing them like that, Kyuri rejoiced. He asked them about what they were thinking, to which one of them replied that to get caught by a guy like him. His companion was confused. The protagonist opens the chest and sees spellbook 5 in it. He pondered why it was there. He learned the magic apple's potential anyway, so he should try it with weapons the next time. The 2 thieves requested Kyuri to not leave them like that. Next morning in the castle, thieves were asked to walk faster by the prisoner. Villagers mutter within themselves how Kyuri has subdued the Dark Shadow members, and that the rumor even says they have not taken anything even though they were the big shot thieves. The other villager exclaimed that perhaps the Felidal household has nothing of value, to which some other person replied that certainly they did not have any luxurious things, and added that he had seen the crotch of the Lord's pants which had a tear on them once. The other one inquired if they surely couldn't be troubled on food, as he was the Lord. Even Kyuri is now so thin as compared to before, and added that tax had not risen much. And then we hear a voice coming from the castle asking to make sure Kyuri had not forgotten anything. His mother asked him to be a good boy, while his father instructed him that if something happens, he should make sure to tell them right away. Kyuri said to himself that the time has come. He nodded to his parents and claimed that he was fine, as he was just entering the school after all. However, in the next 3 years, it was not an exaggeration to say that his future life will be decided. Suddenly, villagers called him, and when he was in front of them, they gave him some money, saying that they made a little extra earning. And the other one mentioned that it was from everyone and was a farewell gift, to which Kyuri replied that they did not have to do so but thanked them, and added that he will use it carefully. Back to the carriage, he went and bid a goodbye to everyone. Suddenly, the carriage man stopped the carriage and mentioned to him that there seemed to be a woman who was carrying a huge bag ahead. Kyuri asked him if he should give her a ride, to which the carriage man said that it was dangerous if she encountered a beast after all. She no doubt had beautiful hairs, those composed features that seemed to give a feeling of peace, and she was also dressed like a commoner. As the scene unfolds, the protagonist realizes that he cannot be wrong, as he was already bumping into the protagonist. He recognized that girl as from the Gensu Academy. Her name was Iris Palala. He wondered now what he should do, and wondered if it was okay for a side character like him to meet the protagonist like that. No, it was not. The other moment he thought, but she might be feeling unwell after all, and added if he can just abandon a frail girl. He realizes that he must not leave her like that. The carriage man asked him about what he should do now as a human being. He should call her out. Kyuri said that now he will at least try to talk to her, as this was an unexpected event, though he was sure that it would work out somehow. With a smile, he asked her if everything was right and inquired if she was okay, to which the girl replied to him that she just got tired, so she decided to take a rest. He thought to bid her goodbye but couldn't do so, and asked if she perhaps headed to Elenor Academy. She nodded and exclaimed that Kyuri was right. She asked him about how he knew, to which he replied that he was also on his way to Elenor Academy after all, and so he had a guess that she might be the same. The girl instructed him not to worry about her and exclaimed that she will be heading there on foot. She also thanked him for showing concern for her. Kyuri wondered if she thought that he was suspicious. On foot, though it will take half a month, he kicked her in his thoughts by saying maybe she had brought extra food. To think of it, Iris came from a fairly poor family in the original. Even more reason why he cannot ignore her. But first, he needed to clear her suspicions. He introduced himself to her as mentioned that he was from the felidal house of Helen. She was surprised to hear that and confirmed it if by Helen he meant the holdings with the hot spring. He cleared her doubt and asked if she had visited it, perhaps. In his mind, he rejoiced that she knew about hot springs. The girl replied that no, visiting the spring of Helen was a dream of hers. Then she decided to go with Kurori. He realized that she was carrying a lot of luggage, and it was good that she got in easily. The girl thanked him for letting a commoner like her to ride a carriage and that for it one day she will repay him. Kurori asked her not to worry about it and added that in fact, traveling all alone by himself would have been boring, so she is the one who is helping him out. He asked her if she would like to talk about the hot spring, to which the girl rejoiced and agreed. Kurori started talking about it by claiming that the hot springs of Helen were mostly good for the skin as it makes the skin smooth and white. And recently they learned that drinking its water was also beneficial for the body. She was amazed and admitted that this was the first time she was hearing something like that. Later on, he grabbed her hand and asked her to join him for lunch, to which she hesitated and said that he did not have to do so much for her as to be treated to dinner on top of letting her ride the carriage. She was sad that she will never be able to repay her debt if he does that all. To which he said that it was fine and not to worry about it as for real it was not a problem. Kurori says to himself, in that case maybe he should tell her that meeting like this already deviates from the original game. He mentioned to her that there was something important to tell her. She inquired him about what was happening so suddenly. He exclaimed to her that life at school might not be that fun and that she will probably be discriminated against for being a commoner. He told her by discrimination he meant about being blue eyes and people will say that she was bound by her fate, and all. The girl said that Kurori was as vague as she did not understand anything, to which he replied to her that it meant sitting with him and having lunch. The girl seemed a bit hurt and said that she was not going to do so. The carriage man, seeing them arguing, asked about what they were doing. He asked them to get inside the cabin where they took a seat at the table. After Kurori showed her sympathy, reservations and suspicion slowly went away. Iris slowly started talking about her life. Her father was a blacksmith but he passed away when she was only 12, and since then she was living with her mother and 5 siblings working on the fields because of the high taxes. They could barely manage. Apparently she wanted to support her family on her own by letting her attend the school. She mentioned to him that she was happy that she got accepted to the school but added that she felt lonely while leaving her home and that she still felt uneasy, to which Kurori replied to her that it will be alright and he knows that she will do just fine there. They kept talking about the gloomy subject and wondered if she was feeling okay. He decided to brighten her mood with interesting stories about his father. As the carriage suddenly stopped in the middle, Iris wondered what could have happened. The carriage man informed Kurori that there was some trouble up ahead. Kurori was confused about which trouble he was talking about. He saw some monsters ahead and realized that Iris was attacked by those monsters and that she was in trouble because they took her important entry permit. Thus she wanted to help them because they offered a reward, to which she nodded. After listening to all that, Kurori could not just decline and decided to prepare the sword. As they went deeper, Kurori asked Iris to duck as there were 2 wolf-type monsters. He exclaimed that not to drag, but he could deal with them even from that distance. But if he were to do that, then she will say that she has not done anything so she cannot accept the money. So he asked her if she could hit them with magic from that position, to which she replied to him that probably not as they were too far away. Kurori decided that then he will take one down from over there and the other should rush to them to attack. Iris then completed by saying that she will finish that one and added that she could do it. Kurori casted some magic spell and added the property change of water, and that of ice. He created the ice arrow, then got with a magical gust of wind and fired at the enemy. She was amazed to see him doing so well. Suddenly Kurori reminded her that the other was coming. Then she defeated the other wolf monster with her sword and chopped its head off. Kurori exclaimed to himself that she was as fast as he expected from the protagonist. He congratulated her that she did it. Suddenly, he noticed that she was crying as her sword broke during the fight. He offered her a new sword, but she mentioned that her mother bought it for her from her hard-earned money, to which he then offers to repair it for her and asks her not to worry about it much. She stopped crying and asked him if he could really repair it for her. Kurori said that of course he could do that. As the scene unfolds, we see the story of avoiding the fallen ending truly begins. In the academy, a teacher announced that new students enrolling were in the dormitory and that they can fill out their papers here, to which students nodded. The teacher added that girls had the inner building, and that boys should just go and find themselves. On reaching the dormitory, Kurori found it amazing and said that he still needed to put everything in its place and decided to scout around the academy. Well, that was his plan after all, but he was too tired for it, so instead he decided to rest and leave the scouting for the next day. In the morning, he woke up and decided to look around a bit while jogging. He realized that now that he started running around, he liked the place. The academy was pretty big, as wherever he looked, it was just colossal buildings. The scale was huge, so huge that it started to wear him down mentally. After roaming around, he finally decided to return to his room and beat Iris's sword into its shape. In his dormitory, he realized that the sword might be faster to reforge instead of mending it. As long as it looked like the original, there should be no problem. It somehow felt so relaxing to him to get back into blacksmithing after those few days, so he ignited the fireplace with his magic spell and smiled looking at it. While he was busy reforging the sword, someone made a noise at his door, to which he replied that he was coming and wondered who could have made all that noise. When he opened the gate, he found a boy standing in front of him. By looking at him, he pondered if it was not a titan. The boy introduced himself and said that he moved in next door. He had a deep voice. Curie also introduced himself and informed him that he was Curie Helen and asked him if he was in the same year as him, to which the boy replied hi, that he's in Wing 1-2 and added that he was the son of the Royal Knight's capital, Vainlot. Curie mentioned to him that his family also owned Helen territories and that it was nice meeting him. Curie showed interest to work hard together as fellow freshmen. But there came no answer from the Titan boy, so Curie asked him if there was nothing else, then can they talk again another day, to which the boy bid him goodbye and slammed the door too hard. Curie admitted that he was a little awkward around the people, and now that was over, so it was time to make some swords. Suddenly, the Titan boy opened the door again and apologized that he was there again. Curie asked him what it was about, to which the boy apologized about his last behavior in the conversation and added that he forgot to hand over something. He gave Curie something, to which Curie admitted that he would have loved to give him a return gift, but at that moment he had nothing to give. Titan boy asked him not to worry about it, and he exited the room the second time. As Curie made his way back to his cluttered workbench, the same young boy reappeared, this time offering a heartfelt apology for inconveniencing him once again. Curie couldn't help but marvel at the boy's ability to engage in a conversation from behind a closed door. Intrigued by the boy's presence, Curie listened as the boy shared his personal story. The Titan boy started explaining about his past as he had spent his childhood yearning for strength, diligently honing his skills with a sword, just as his father had instructed. The boy's quest for self-improvement had led him to the academy, with the hope of molding his character and becoming a valuable member of society. However, once he arrived, he found himself adrift, unsure of his purpose and how to navigate the complex world around him. Curie couldn't help but remark to himself that this encounter seemed to be an exercise in character exposition, as the boy bared his soul. Returning from his thoughts, Curie asked him by inviting the Titan boy to enter his room and advised him to take a seat wherever he pleased. Finally, Curie had the opportunity to see the boy's face, yet he couldn't shake his sense of uncertainty about what he should do next, now that he'd welcomed him inside. Curie couldn't help but wonder why he had led the boy into his room and why the boy chose to stand directly behind him without uttering a word. The silence between them grew palpable and awkward, and Curie did not know how to break the ice. The young Titan's positioning directly behind him certainly didn't help matters. Curie thought that it seemed like the most inconvenient place to initiate a conversation. As Curie continued to judge the giant Titan boy while working on his sword, at last the boy finally broke the silence with a simple question. He inquired about the purpose of why Curie was busy hammering on a sword, to which Curie said that he was just trying to fix that hammer for his friend and was trying to reforge it so it looked original but was better than the old one. He was confused and was continuously thinking about what could be going on in the mind of Vane. He pondered if the Titan boy would cut him down if he messes up with his answers. Will the future Knight Captain throw him away like a piece of trash? He replied to the boy that he was in the middle of fixing his friend's sword. Since he was doing it, he would like to return it to a better state than it originally was. Also, he could sit next to him while they talk. The boy apologized about that and admitted that he was a bit slow when it came to such affairs. He continued and advised Curie that if he notices his rude behavior, then not to hesitate to point it out. On hearing the boy, Curie exclaimed that he was just a gentle giant after all and offered him a stool to sit on. The giant appreciated Curie for thinking so much about his friend's sword and referred to him as Mr. Curie, to which he asked him not to call him Mr. as they were of the same age and advised to drop the formalities between them. The boy said that he did not mind it and agreed. Curie asked about what his hobbies were, to which the boy replied that it was nothing in particular. So Curie asked the next question if he had any favorite meal. The giant claimed that he never rated the food on whether he liked it or not. Hearing such answers from him, Curie said to himself that he did not give a damn about it. Because of that, he should leave. He realized that the giant was a good person, but he cannot keep the conversation going. It will take quite a few chapters to stop being reserved around each other, and the giant was not the person who leaves without being asked to, but Curie could not bring himself to send him away. On the other hand, the giant exclaimed that he was getting hungry. That was it, as Kyuri asked him to have lunch and mentioned that after they had their fill in the cafeteria, then to call it a day. The next morning, the giant appeared again, so Kyuri asked the giant if he was early and if he was not vain, as he was probably waiting for the first light. He asked the giant to come in. Since yesterday, Kyuri kept his company, so he wanted to take him somewhere to show his gratitude. He mentioned that they could have breakfast over there too. Kyuri exclaimed that it was unexpectedly friendly. He replied, that sounded nice to him and he will be looking forward to filling his belly. While they were both talking, someone knocked on the door and opened it. Iris was there at the door, so Kyuri asked her to come in, and they wished each other a sweet good morning. She was worried about whether she did be allowed inside the boys' dormitory, but since school had not started yet, so she just went ahead and came over. Suddenly, she was shocked to see the giant boy, who introduced himself and said that he was Vane Lot, to which Iris also did the same awkwardly. It looked like they were already introduced, so Kyuri informed her that Vane wanted to take them somewhere that day. He asked her if she wanted to come along with, as he thought that if she was there, the non-existent conversation could flow. But to his disappointment, she refused by apologizing, as there was the library in the academy where she could read all the books which she wished to, and that she was really looking forward to checking that out. Kyuri exclaimed that it was a darn shame. She added that she would be happy if he would invite her next time, which reminded Kyuri that he finished fixing her sword, to which she thanked him and informed him that she sent that gold coin back to her family. Seeing them so friendly, Vane asked about the relationship between them, to which Kyuri replied to him that they ended up traveling together to the academy. The giant admitted that he thought Iris was a true beauty. They all were surprised to hear him say that, and Iris admitted that it was the first time anyone had ever called her beautiful. So she thanked the giant for it, to which he said that he stated the obvious. Kyuri wondered if they were taking the conversation in that direction, and if Vane was among the boyfriend candidates. To think of it, he was a natural swooner. Vane asked them to depart, to which he agreed, so they started riding their horses. Suddenly, Kyuri saw a cute-looking sheep on the back of Vane's horse. Vane thought of treating him with that, to which Kyuri asked him if they were going to roast it and admitted to himself that normally he would not be too much into it. But in that vast field of grass, it might not be too bad. In the north, crops barely grew, and as folks there do not eat any vegetables, Kyuri thought that he had heard about that before. Vane continued that so-called human ingenuity led people to eat raw meat. By consuming raw meat, it was possible to attain the necessary nutrients, which normally were found in plants, and that's how the people of the northern land lived. It fascinated Kyuri, though Vane informed that they were known for rarely falling ill and their long lifespan. Kyuri realized where the conversation was going, as the giant wanted him to have a taste of it, to which he pleaded to himself to go home. He added that the story alone was more than filling, but on reaching the place, Kyuri found it a beautiful place. He exclaimed to himself that if it were not for the tragedy that was about to happen, he himself might have shed a tear or two. While Kyuri was regretting his decision, the giant butchered the sheep and claimed that it was a fine sheep with a well-north savoring. He kept the sheep facing Kyuri, to which the protagonist thought within himself and asked the sheep to not look at him like that and said that he did not have the power to save that sheep. The giant took out his knife and butchered the sheep, but to Kyuri's surprise, he saw his own face inside the sheep's eyes. Vane asked him if anything was wrong and if he looked into its eyes, to which he agreed. He pleaded to Vane in his thoughts to not just leave him hanging with some profound-sounding line. He asked him if it meant something when he looked into the sheep's eyes, to which the giant replied that it did not really mean anything. Kyuri knew that Vane was up to something and was giving him crap, so he asked if there were some anecdotes about it or something and requested him to answer, to which the giant replied that it was not an interesting story and added that if he looks in the eyes of the livestock, then he will think about its face while eating it. He mentioned that's what his uncle said to him and asked him not to mind it as everyone is different. He announced that it was time for the feast and presented raw meat in front of Kyuri and started eating. He exclaimed that the liver was the tastiest. Kyuri realized that he cannot tell him that after he prepared all that and decided to not lose heart and accept his kindness. For example, he says if a Sai invites him to gather strawberries, then he takes the strawberry and even removes the stem. Moreover, presents the sweetest of them all. Will he be able to refuse to take it? And like that only, he should not refuse the giant and decided to think of that bloody liver as a sweet, sweet strawberry. He decided to eat the raw meat to prove his friendship and ate it in one go. He realized that it had a mild taste. Seeing him eating the liver, the giant asked him if it was that good that it brought him to tears and admitted that it was the first time anyone showed such appreciation. Kyuri was relieved by seeing Vane smile for the first time and was glad that he ate that meat. The giant was easy to misunderstand, but he was cool. Vane exclaimed that he had never made any friends before but thought that they would get along well, to which Kyuri replied that yeah, the sheep's intestine bound them together, although that was enough raw meat for him that day. He mentioned to Kyuri on reaching the farm that he visits every room to introduce himself, but it did not seem like he will be able to become friends with anyone from 1-3. to which Kyuri admitted that it was hard to become friends with just anyone and that he did his best not to worry about that. Vane exclaimed that even though they were fellow humans, people were capable of both loving and hating each other, so he wondered what the difference was. Kyuri expected that it was not something that he thought of daily. The giant interrupted him and asked him if he did not have to prepare for the next day's class placement tests, to which Kyuri said that he thought he had both written and physical tests down, as he was learning every day, and was training since his childhood. Vane was also confident about the physical one, but for the written test, he was unsure. Anyway, he said that he will try to aim as high as he can. He asked Kyuri if the top 40 made it to Class A, to which Kyuri replied that if nothing extraordinary happened. As the scene unfolded, we see that someone appears at the door of Kyuri, and they wonder who the energetic visitor could be. They both realize that the banging of the door is coming from Kyuri's door. Vane decides to see who is at the door, to which Kyuri thinks to himself that whoever they are in trouble unless they have some important business. Vane's appearance should scare them off. When he opens the door, the lady asks, without even looking at him, if it's Kyuri Helen's room. When she sees Vane, she gets scared but courageously says that although she cannot see his face, she presumes that he's Kyuri and adds that she's there to ask a favor from him. Vane clears her doubts and says that he's not Kyuri. The girl asks him if he could be a friend of his. If so, could he call Kyuri there for her? To which Vane asks her to go away as he cannot do that. Kyuri gets surprised about why Vane was sending the girl away. On hearing Vane's rude words, the girl gets triggered and refers to him as a scoundrel. She asks him why he's in Kyuri's room, as he must be up to no good. Vane asks her what if he was, to which the girl says that then she will just have to remove him from there. Seeing Vane talking like that to the girl, Kyuri comes forward and asks him why he's facing off with her like that, to which Vane replies that it's because she's someone very rude. Kyuri asks the giant to wait inside while he takes care of her, to which Vane nods and goes away. Kyuri then gets to the door and introduces himself to her. He asks her if the two had met before. The girl introduces herself as Crossing Amarake and mentions that it's an honor for her to meet him. She says that she's relieved to see him just as she imagined, to which Kyuri replies that it's good meeting her. He asks her if there's something he can help her with, to which the girl shows her interest and exclaims that she wants to be like his disciple. She has heard tales of his skills with the sword and magic. She adds that she also wants to obtain such strength and asks him if he can teach her the secrets of his powers. Kyuri looks confused and inquires if she wants to come inside for the time being, to which she agrees and goes inside. Kyuri raises a concern to himself, thinking that it's not good, as it feels like whenever something troublesome happens, he just lets people inside to put it off. Vane asked her to leave if she was done there, to which she got offended. The protagonist exclaimed to himself that she should stop it, as she will get eaten by chance, and that she did not stand a chance in front of him. When they were settled in the chairs, he inquired if Crossy was also in the same year as him. Then he asked her why she wanted to become his disciple, to which she replied that she wanted to become stronger. She accidentally met Iris, who told her that he was the one she should seek out. She added that she had heard that he could finish off any beast in seconds and that he was trained so much that his body was as hard as steel. He thought that the story might have been a bit embellished. Vane chimed in and asked why a girl needs to become so strong, which offended the girl. She referred to him as a misogynist and asked him why it was wrong for a girl to become strong. She then added that she was not a girl, she was a man. Her statement was enough to surprise and shock both Vane and Kyuri at the same time. They started thinking about her in their heads, saying that her voice and those mannerisms were that of a woman, so she definitely was a woman. Vane thought if she was the guy, then what was he? The girl continued by saying that in any case, she wanted to become stronger, but first, she would like him to instruct her on what being strong really meant. Kyuri mentioned to her that he could tell her the things he had learned, but that was all, and asked if she was okay with it. She rejoiced and stated that, of course, as she hoped for it. Vane then agreed to accept her as a disciple, to which the girl said that she would devote herself fully, even if she must overcome the limits of her body. She swore that she would make his technique her own. She admitted that he was doing a great honor to her, so she thanked him for it. Vane chimed in again and commented that if she wanted to be strong, then she should train her body first, as with her frame, even if she can learn magic, swordsmanship will be difficult. The girl got offended and asked him to hold his tongue, as she did not like him ordering her. She mentioned to him that she was the disciple of Kyuri, not him. Kyuri asked both of them to calm down, to which the girl agreed and asked if they should start training from that moment itself. Kyuri asked her to train her body first and asked Vane to stop staring at him like that. He wondered if the giant was in love with him. Besides, he was planning to say that from the start for real, and also wished not to get eaten by him. The girl, seeing that her master was in thought, asked him if there was anything specific that she should be doing. Vane chimed in by saying that whatever she wanted to do, she must need to be flexible first and to have some raw strength. Also, he asked her to build some muscles and to stretch her joints, to which Kyuri also agreed to the same. The girl agreed to that. Kyuri, lost in thought, wished to get her to get along so she would not even need him then. Vane continued to advise her to take her time to find her bearings and asked after a week to start running to build her stamina. Until then, she should focus on her flexibility. It surprised Kyuri that Vane knew so much, so he asked the girl to take whatever Vane says as his own words. She nodded obediently. He realized that she was accepting it more easily than he thought. Vane asked her to open her legs a little wider and helped her to do so. The girl asked him to stop touching a maiden's thighs, to which he replied that she said she was a man. She was taken aback and defended herself by saying that she was a man. But still, he should not touch her. She complained that he was pushing too strongly, which hurt her, to which he said if it hurts, then that means she has been slacking off until then. While Kyuri was busy beating a sword, the girl asked Vane to shut up and asked how dare he ridicule her. At the freshman's class assignment test, the teacher introduced herself as their instructor, whose name was Michelle Wu. She announced that the day was their physical test and added that they will run 10 kilometers around the school to start with, and that their time will be their score. She advised them to give their best. Kyuri was relieved that thankfully it was not a complicated test. He thought that it would be a piece of cake. Crossy was upset with Vane as he touched her skin so much and referred to him as a lecher. Vane replied that if he cannot touch her, then he has no means to help her. He stated that she will get used to it. Kyuri exclaimed that Crossy and Vane were as friendly as ever. Then suddenly he noticed that there was Iris as well as Ryle, over whom girls were drooling. There was a big fish, exclaimed Kyuri. She was the daughter of the Prime Minister and the prettiest among the freshmen. She was good at both studies and sports. He admitted that she was his type as she had sapphire eyes with beautiful long hair, and wished that her personality was not rotten. Kyuri admitted that if the girl was more modest, she would have been perfect. Her name was Eliza Duval, and her 4 knights also surrounded her. Everyone was backing away from her due to that. In the original work, Eliza was in Class A, so she would be among the top in the marathon. Thinking of what is to come, perhaps he should say hello, and that is what he did. The next moment when he said hello to her, he got shoved by one of her knights who asked him to be gone. To which he defended himself by saying that he just wanted to say hello to Eliza. He exclaimed to himself about why he was being called a minion by her knights. What does it mean to them? The knight asked him if he could not see that Eliza was preoccupied, but she was just standing there. He defended. Suddenly, Eliza stopped her by saying that it was quite enough. As she bowed in front of Kyuri, he found it a graceful bow. She came forward and stated that he must be Kyuri Helen and introduced herself as Eliza Duval. She then apologized on behalf of her friend for her rude behavior, to which he mentioned that he did not mind it and added that it was nice meeting her. Although she was far from being perfect, she hoped that they could get along well. Though Kyuri mentioned that whether he looked at her bow or her appearance overall, she was a lovely girl. To which she stated that he must have been an expert at flattering a lady. He defended himself by saying that he just spoke the honest facts, to which she thankfully accepted those words and demanded to get excuses as she needed to prepare for the test. Kyuri mentioned to her that they both must do their best in the test. Then they bid goodbye to each other. Kyuri could not believe that she was the girl who would bully Iris in the future and could not imagine that. But she was still capable of doing it and added to himself that is what makes women scary, and that he must stop falling for her charms as it was the biggest reason he was there in the academy for. Suddenly, the teacher from behind asked all the students if they were done warming up, and then the marathon began. Kyuri was able to maintain the lead somehow. The prince had already reached the goal. At that rate, he could come second. The prince mocked him by saying that it looked like he still had some strength to spare, and then congratulated him for coming second in the marathon. Though he came third, as mentioned by the instructor, he could not stomach him. He called Vane when he finished the race. He turned and appreciated him for being better than he thought, to which Kyuri also said that he also ran very well despite having a big body. He thanked Kyuri and asked if the next one was ninth. He could see someone, and later he realized that it was Iris and Eliza. Suddenly, Eliza pushed her. Seeing that, Kyuri commented that they were so desperate, which was ruining their pretty little faces. Though it made sense as they were fighting for the last 1-digit ranking as well as the first place among the girls. Kyuri wanted to scream and tell Iris that if she won, then she might be bullied because of her ranking. But he couldn't do so. He wished her to lose for his sake and for the whole world's sake. Suddenly, he saw Vane shouting at her and motivating her by saying that she could do it, just a little more, and to stay strong. To which he exclaimed to himself that the giant was dumb and that he should stop motivating her. He motivated Eliza to win the race. As the scene unfolds, we see that the race between the two, Eliza and Iris, ended, and the instructor claimed that Eliza was a bit ahead, so she won. Kyuri rejoiced, and Eliza wondered why he was so pleased to see her win. Iris appreciated Eliza for the good work and exclaimed that it was a good race. But instead of saying thank you, she twitched and slapped her hair. Seeing her reaction like that, it looked like Iris was disliked, even though they had a good match. To which Kyuri also agreed and said that it was a good match indeed. and mentioned that they got good results too. Later on, when Kiruri saw the result, he was shocked to see that Iris defeated Eliza, and the next moment defended himself by saying in his head that it cannot be helped as despite being a commoner, she was talented enough to enter that school in the whole achievement test, and she got perfect marks too. The prince was also in the first place, as he expected. In fourth place was Ryle, and he himself was in fifth place. It felt to him like dropping 2 questions stung a lot. As for Vane and Crossy, he decided to look for Vane's result first, which he was so proud about. He thought that it must be better than he expected, and as he thought so, Vane was in the 67th place. Students who had good results in the physical test would be placed in Class A, but the problem was Crossy, as she got placed in physical rank at 122, and her achievement rank was 114. She was going to be in another class due to that. She apologized and said that she was a failure as a disciple, to which he asked her not to cry as she just had to do her best next time. To which she told him while crying that from next time, she will do her best to keep up with him. Vane chimed in and stated to her that a man never cries that easily. Kiruri can help her with her studies and while he watches over her body training. Crossy got offended by his gesture and asked him to stop talking about what a man does and called him a beast too. Vane mocked her by saying that is what she gets for only eating vegetables every day, and decided to run to Kiruri's room. She asked him to stop ordering her. Kiruri was surprised and wondered if Vane was talking about going to his room. The room was well suited for studying like one's own apartment, said a boy. The boy exclaimed that he had beaten Kiruri in terms of studying, to which as a defense, Kiruri replied that he also did his best for the physical test. That aside, he asked him how he knew about his name, to which he stated that, as Kiruri was famous, he knew his name. That being said, now Kiruri asked him if his name was Ryle, to which Ryle replied that it was nice meeting him. Kiruri wondered what was about that weird pause. Also, wasn't his grip too strong? Ryle bid him goodbye by saying that they will talk more next time. After Ryle was gone for good, Iris appeared and announced happily that she got in first place, to which he said, as he expected, and added that in the future too, she will do great. Granted, he was expecting one hell of a thank you once she became successful. She asked him to leave it to her, and he mentioned to her that he is counting on her for it, saying that she bid him goodbye, which left him pondering if she was going to the library too. He realized that he also should go back before those two wreck his room. But the next moment he remembered that there was still one person he definitely had to see first, which was Eliza. The other students were too scared to get close to her. He wished that she could realize the situation she was in. But still, if nobody mentions that, then he had to. So he asked her straight away why she made a long face. In return, she turned away and there came no answer from her or any of her minions. They seemed to have something to say but were trapped in front of her. He also noticed that the girl who called him a minion that day was also gone. He decided to be casual and asked her was it not great that she got 499 points, as it was not going to change that she almost scored full marks. To which she replied that she did not know the official name of vitamin C by saying that she ran away crying while Kiruri tried to stop her. He asked her to wait, but it was all in vain. He realized that Eliza also made the same mistake, as he did not know either. He also never thought that the official name for vitamin C was ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid was a naturally occurring organic compound with antioxidant properties. It is a white solid, but in pure samples can appear yellowish, and it dissolves well in water to give mildly acidic solutions. And he was finally done and made a good sword later on. He looked at the sword and asked himself if it was not a masterpiece and decided to test it when it was done. He went on to ride his horse and went towards the forest. He thought, if not mistaken, that in that forest there were a bunch of small monsters. While he was in the forest, he discovered a rotting corpse monster and realized that it was the wound of a rotting corpse demon. He added that he probably should not fight the poisonous demon, but at the same time, he wanted to test and try his new sword on it. He really could not take a ghoul on his own. Then he decided to materialize. It was the kind of magic that needed high-class authorization from the government. It was even the main subject of the third grimoire. By saying that, he exclaimed magical beast creation, those who were not visible to the naked eye. In frustration, he kicked some vegetables, and they got offended and started approaching him, which looked pretty bad to him as he quickly apologized to them and ordered them by asking them to listen to him as if he was their creator, to which they agreed. He then ordered them to restrain the monster. The next moment, he rode his horse and asked his creations to be careful about the monster's poison. He then slashed the monster's head off. He exclaimed, holding his sword, that he cut through the rumored hard-skinned ghoul. It felt like he cut through pudding. It was time for his vegetable guys to say goodbye, so he cast a spell by saying, "Thou who are not visible to the naked eyes, return to the earth." He rode his horse and hoped that maybe, a little gently, it did not hurt. Suddenly, he found a girl whom he recognized as Iris. He exclaimed to her that he did not think that she would be there too, to which she replied and explained to him that she was there hoping to collect some wild plants as she was feeling homesick because she could not eat like those back home. She mentioned to him that today she had a good meeting, to which he asked her who the person was. She replied to him that she did not know him, but she knew that he was a good person. It was funny that she did not know him very well, yet she referred to him as a good person. To this, she stated that if they really were the gentle person she thought they were, it might be nice to settle down together one day. Kyuri was sure that he should meet the person who revolved around him. Originally, in the game, there was one person who appeared in the school and supported Iris and became an important friend of hers, but he was not able to see the face of that person. Coming back from his thoughts, he stated that if it was someone that she judged to be a good person, then they probably were. But it was still better to take care, just in case. To this, she replied to him that she would be careful. Then Kyuri mentioned to her that he also had a good meeting with someone. She announced that they both had good meetings today, but she said that he looked kind of lonely. He asked her if he looked like a loner and later exclaimed that she was probably right. She continued by advising him that maybe if he talks, then it might be easier to organize his feelings. To which he replied that it was not enough to just talk about it, but it might help. On that note, she asked him if it was a fight, to which he said kind of. She instructed him that then he would have to make up if he fought. He took it as motivation. While riding the horse, he claimed that the horse could run faster than that, as he could make it go faster. He asked her if she wanted to try, to which she agreed and asked him to make it fly. And in that way, the day ended there, and thus the next day began. It was the first step of the 3 years and he accompanied Iris. Their new uniform indicated that their school life had started from that day. It was a new start to the journey that Kyuri was heading along with Iris.